Alex had never imagined a day like this. The phone call was abrupt, almost robotic, the voice on the other end cold and distant. "Your brother, he's gone." The words felt like a slap, numbing his senses. His knees buckled beneath him, and his mother's frantic voice echoed in his ears. But it was her sobs, so raw and desperate, that broke through the fog in his mind. It hit him then, the reality that his brother, the one person who had always been by his side, was no longer in the world. He couldn't breathe. The silence between the two of them in that moment was louder than any noise. His mother's tear-streaked face was the last thing he saw before he collapsed, trying to hold on to something, anything that made sense. But it was all gone. His brother was gone. The weight of the news crashed over Alex like an unrelenting tide. Every part of his body felt numb, as if it was no longer his. His world, once filled with the small comforts of routine, had crumbled. His mother's sobs echoed through his mind, but all he could hear was silence. He couldn't process the finality of it all. His brother, the one person who always understood him, was gone. The hospital room felt suffocating, as though it was closing in on him. He couldn't remember how he had gotten here, just that it felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. His mind tried to comprehend the words the doctor had said, but all he could feel was emptiness. Days passed in a blur, and Alex found himself wandering through life on autopilot. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything around him was just an illusion. The emptiness in his heart grew with each passing moment. The only thing that remained real to him was the unbearable weight of loss. He looked through his brother's belongings, each item more painful than the last. His fingers brushed over an old baseball glove, and memories of childhood flooded his mind. He remembered their late-night talks, the dreams they shared. But now, there was nothing but silence. A deep, painful silence that filled the room and the spaces between his thoughts. He couldn't understand why it had happened. His brother had been everything to him, and now, the world felt irreparably broken. Alex could no longer ignore the growing questions in his mind. Something didn't feel right about the way his brother's death was being handled. He had been told it was an accident, but as Alex sifted through his brother's things, he found strange inconsistencies, messages, notes, and small details that didn't add up. His brother had always been secretive about certain things, but this felt different. A hidden side of his brother seemed to be emerging, one that Alex had never known. There was a part of him that feared uncovering the truth, but the need for answers was stronger. As the days wore on, the urge to understand what had really happened grew more urgent. Alex knew that if he didn't investigate now, he might never get the chance to. The answers he sought were buried, and it was up to him to dig them out. The message on the torn piece of paper wasn't the only thing that raised suspicions. Alex had found his brother's phone, hidden away under a stack of old clothes. The screen flickered to life, and Alex noticed several missed calls from an unknown number, along with a voicemail that hadn't been listened to. The message was short, almost cryptic, leaving Alex more confused than ever. It was as if someone had been trying to reach his brother, but why had he kept it a secret? His mind raced, his chest tightening with anxiety. The more he uncovered, the more questions he had. What was his brother involved in? And who was this person calling him? Every piece of information seemed to lead deeper into a web of mystery, one that Alex felt compelled to untangle, no matter how dangerous it might be. Alex spent days trying to make sense of the cryptic message on his brother's phone. Every call, every text, only deepened the mystery. His brother had always been secretive, but this was different. Alex's suspicion grew as he discovered a series of increasingly odd patterns in his brother's life. The uneaten food in his fridge, unopened letters, and unsent messages suggested his brother had been planning something. But what? Alex couldn't ignore the feeling that something wasn't right, something his family wasn't telling him. The more he dug, the more tangled the web became. There was no turning back now. He had to know what had truly happened, no matter where the answers led. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his mother was hiding something. She had been distant, her words clipped, when asked about his brother's recent behavior. It wasn't like her to avoid difficult conversations, and Alex knew that something wasn't adding up. After hours of going through his brother's things, Alex confronted her. The silence between them was unbearable. His mother's eyes filled with tears as she tried to deflect his questions. But Alex pressed on, demanding the truth. The burden of her silence was too much to bear, and he needed answers. She had to know something that could explain the strange circumstances of his brother's life, and he wasn't leaving until he heard it. The conversation with his mother had left Alex with more questions than answers. He needed a new lead, and fast. He decided to track down one of his brother's closest friends, Ryan, who had always been a constant presence in his brother's life. When Alex arrived at Ryan's apartment, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Ryan, 29, looked uneasy, like he was avoiding eye contact. After a few moments of uncomfortable silence, Ryan finally spoke. He hinted at something his brother had been involved in, something dangerous. But before he could elaborate, he grew quiet, his eyes darting around as if afraid to speak. It was clear Ryan knew more than he was letting on. Ryan's words were a blur in Alex's mind, each phrase adding a new layer of confusion. Something dangerous had been happening in the weeks leading up to his brother's death, but the details were hazy. Ryan was afraid, that much was clear. But afraid of what? As Alex left Ryan's apartment, his mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were both being watched, that they were being followed. Every glance over his shoulder felt like an attempt to catch him in the act. He had to move carefully. Every choice now carried weight, and one wrong move could push him further into a web of danger he wasn't sure he could escape. With every passing hour, Alex felt the walls closing in. He knew too much now. The cryptic messages, the hidden phone calls, the warnings from Ryan, they all pointed to something bigger, something darker. His brother had been involved in something he shouldn't have been, and Alex was getting too close to the truth. The more he uncovered, the more dangerous it became. Someone was watching him. Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket. The message was short and to the point. Stop asking questions. Leave it alone. The threat was clear, but Alex couldn't back down now. He had to finish what he started, even if it meant facing the unknown consequences. Alex's search for answers led him to a shocking discovery. His brother had been hiding something much darker than he could have imagined. Hidden within the old diary he found, scribbled between pages, were cryptic notes and phone numbers. His brother had been involved in something that neither Alex nor his family had known about. The more Alex read, the more his heart raced. There were mentions of threats, shady figures, and meetings in places Alex didn't recognize. The diary entries were filled with fear and urgency, but also with a strange sense of inevitability, as if his brother had been preparing for something terrible. Alex had to know what it all meant. He couldn't stop now. His brother's final days were a mystery he was determined to solve. Alex's investigation led him to an old acquaintance of his brother's, a man named Greg. Greg, a tall, middle-aged man with a scruffy beard, had always been in the background of Alex's brother's life, but never too involved. When Alex approached him, Greg's eyes immediately hardened. He seemed to know exactly why Alex was there. After a tense silence, Greg finally spoke, revealing fragments of the truth. He mentioned a secret organization, one that Alex's brother had gotten involved with. The group was known for its shady dealings, and Greg hinted that his brother had been trying to get out before it was too late. Alex was stunned by the revelation. His brother had been in too deep, and now it was too late to save him. Greg's words echoed in Alex's mind as he left the apartment. A secret organization? His brother involved in something so dangerous? The thought made Alex's stomach churn. He couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in on him. The further he went into his brother's life, the deeper the shadows grew. He didn't know who to trust anymore. As he walked through the streets, Alex kept looking over his shoulder, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on him. He wasn't just dealing with grief anymore. He was stepping into something far more dangerous. And the more he uncovered, the more he realized that there were people who would do anything to keep the truth buried. With every step, Alex felt the danger closing in. He had made the decision to find out the truth, no matter the cost. That night, he followed the last lead Greg had given him, a run-down warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The air was thick with tension as Alex approached the building, the faint sound of muffled voices drifting from within. As he peered through a crack in the wall, he saw shadows moving inside, figures talking in low, urgent voices. Alex couldn't make out the words, but the scene was enough to make his heart race. He had found the heart of the mystery, and now there was no turning back. He had to find out what his brother had been involved in. The moment Alex stepped closer, the door to the warehouse creaked open and a cold chill ran down his spine. A voice from behind him startled him, and he spun around. It was Ryan. "You shouldn't be here," Ryan said, his tone low and urgent. "They'll come for you if you keep digging." Alex stood frozen, fear and confusion mixing in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me?" he demanded. Ryan hesitated for a moment before answering, his voice barely a whisper. "It was too dangerous. I couldn't get involved. But now you're in this too." Alex had crossed a line, and he couldn't go back. He was too deep now to stop, and with the truth so close there was no way to turn back. Alex's search for the truth had led him to a dark crossroads. The warehouse, a place his brother had once visited, now stood as a symbol of the perilous path ahead. His heart pounded with a mixture of dread and determination. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the empty alley as he approached the building. With every step, the realization hit him. There was no going back. The shadows inside held secrets that were too dangerous to be uncovered, but Alex couldn't stop. He needed answers. The closer he got, the more it felt like he was being pulled into something much larger, something he might never escape. But his brother's death haunted him, and the truth was all that mattered now. As Alex moved closer to the warehouse, he saw a figure in the shadows. His heart raced, but he didn't stop. The figure was tall, wearing a dark coat, their face hidden in the darkness. Alex's instincts told him to be cautious, but his desire for answers drove him forward. The figure stepped into the light, revealing Ryan. "I told you not to come here." Ryan's voice was low, his face hardened. Alex was taken aback by the fear in his eyes. "Why are you here, Ryan?" he asked, trying to control the unease creeping into his voice. Ryan hesitated before responding, his tone more urgent than before. "You need to leave now, Alex. They're not going to stop." Ryan's warning sent a chill through Alex's spine. "What do you mean they? Who are you talking about?" Alex demanded. Ryan glanced around nervously, then motioned for Alex to follow him. They walked further into the alley, where Ryan revealed the dark truth. "Your brother was in over his head," Ryan said, his voice barely a whisper. "He got mixed up with a powerful group, dangerous people who won't stop until they're in control of everything. I tried to help him, but he was too deep." Alex felt the weight of Ryan's words hit him like a punch. His brother had been entangled in something much bigger, and now Alex was caught in the aftermath. There was no turning back. The truth was finally out, but it only raised more questions. The revelation hit Alex like a freight train. He had known his brother had secrets, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. As they walked further into the alley, Alex's mind raced. Who were these people? What had his brother gotten involved in? Ryan stopped walking, turning to face him. "I shouldn't be telling you this," Ryan said, his voice low. "But it's too late now. You've already crossed the line." Alex stood still, his body tense with both fear and resolve. "I need to know everything," he said. Ryan looked over his shoulder before lowering his voice even further. "They're watching you, Alex. They know you're getting close. Be careful." The fear in Ryan's voice was unmistakable, but it didn't stop Alex from pressing for more. "What do you mean they're watching me?" he demanded. Ryan hesitated, clearly struggling with his decision to say anything further. After a long pause, he spoke. "There's a lot at stake here. Your brother wasn't just involved with them. He was going to expose them. They found out. That's why he's gone, and now they're coming after you." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Alex felt the weight of the threat settle around him, but there was no turning back. His brother had died trying to expose a dangerous group, and Alex now had to finish what his brother started, no matter the cost. Alex's heart raced as he stood outside the building that had once felt so familiar, now a place of fear and uncertainty. The truth was so close, yet the danger loomed larger than ever. The faces he had once trusted were now shrouded in mystery, and every step felt like a risk. Inside the building, a meeting was taking place, one that would define the course of Alex's life forever. He had to expose the truth, not just for himself, but for his brother's memory. The weight of his brother's death pressed down on him. There was no turning back now. As he stepped forward, his breath caught in his throat. The choice had been made. He would confront those who had destroyed his brother's life, even if it meant putting his own at risk. Inside the building, Alex finally came face to face with the figures who had manipulated his brother. He could feel the tension in the air as they sized him up, the weight of their cold stares almost suffocating. "You shouldn't have come here," one of them said, his voice low and menacing. Alex's pulse quickened. "I'm here for the truth," Alex replied, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to break through. The men exchanged glances, and for a moment, Alex felt like he had been transported into a nightmare. He could sense the power these men held, the danger they represented. But Alex wasn't going to back down. He had nothing left to lose. The confrontation escalated quickly. The men's voices grew louder as they tried to intimidate Alex, but his resolve only strengthened. "You think you can silence me?" Alex asked, his voice rising. "You think I'll just walk away? I won't stop until I expose everything." The man in the center stepped forward, his expression darkening. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he growled, a threat hanging in the air. But Alex didn't flinch. He could see the fear behind the anger in their eyes. They knew he was onto something bigger than they could control. The truth was slipping through their fingers, and Alex was the only one who could hold it. The threat of violence hung in the air, but Alex's mind was clear. He had one goal now, to make them confess, to expose them for who they really were. "Tell me what happened to my brother," Alex demanded, his voice steady. The room went silent. The man in front of him hesitated, his expression flickering with uncertainty. "Your brother was a liability," he finally admitted, his voice cold. "He knew too much. He was going to bring us down." Alex's heart sank as the truth hit him like a blow. His brother had been killed to protect their secrets. But this revelation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Alex now had the power to destroy them, and he was ready to take it. Alex had gotten what he came for, but the price was high. The man's confession sent shockwaves through him, and he knew that exposing the truth would come with consequences. The room was still, the silence deafening. "Now, you'll answer for what you did," Alex said quietly, his voice firm but heavy with the weight of the moment. As he turned to leave, the man spoke again, his voice low. "You won't get away with this," he warned, but Alex didn't stop. He had crossed the point of no return, and now there was no going back. The truth was out, and nothing could silence it. Alex stepped into the night, feeling the weight of his brother's death lift, but the battle was far from over. Alex walked away from the building, the weight of the confrontation settling on his shoulders. His mind buzzed with the words the men had said, each confession a piece of his brother's painful past. But the truth didn't bring peace. It only deepened the ache. The sky above him was darkening, mirroring the storm brewing inside. Alex knew that exposing the truth wasn't enough. The people responsible for his brother's death were still out there, free. But it was a start. He couldn't undo what had been done, but he could ensure that his brother's death wasn't in vain. With every step, Alex felt the reality of his journey hitting him harder. The fight wasn't over, and he was ready to face whatever came next. As Alex made his way down the empty street, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was an unknown number, but he answered anyway. "You don't know what you're dealing with," a voice on the other end said, chillingly calm. Alex's blood ran cold. "You think you can just walk away from this?" the voice continued. "We're watching you, Alex. You can't expose us. Not now, not ever." Alex's grip tightened around the phone, the cold fear creeping back in. They had warned him before, but this time the threat felt real. "I will expose you," Alex replied, his voice steady despite the rising panic. "This ends now." The line went dead. Alex knew the stakes had just escalated, and he had no choice but to keep pushing forward. Alex walked the streets with purpose now, each step a decision made. The night had fallen, and the city was quieter than usual. He headed to the address Ryan had given him, the place where the group had been meeting. Every corner he turned made his heart race faster. As he reached the building, a sense of dread filled him. He didn't know if he would be walking into another trap, or if he would finally get the answers he needed. The door was slightly ajar, and the dim light inside flickered. Alex stepped through, the silence inside almost suffocating. Every sense in his body was on alert. He was close. Too close. There was no turning back now. Inside the building, Alex moved carefully through the corridors, his steps echoing in the otherwise quiet space. He could hear voices ahead, hushed, urgent whispers. He crept closer, pressing himself against the wall, trying to remain unseen. The voices grew clearer, and what he heard made his stomach churn. They were discussing the next move, how to deal with the problem Alex had now become. One of them mentioned his brother's name, and Alex's blood ran cold. They hadn't forgotten him. They hadn't forgotten his brother. The time for questions was over. It was time to act. With a deep breath, Alex stepped forward, ready for the confrontation that awaited him. With the element of surprise on his side, Alex burst into the room. The men froze, eyes wide with shock. Alex didn't waste time. "I know everything," he said, his voice loud and unwavering. "And you're going to pay for what you did." The men looked at each other, panic creeping into their expressions. They had underestimated him. The fight that ensued was quick and chaotic, but Alex's anger fueled him. Each move was calculated, driven by the pain of his brother's death and the need for justice. When the last man fell to the ground, Alex stood victorious, his breath coming in heavy gasps. The battle wasn't over, but this was a victory. The truth was now in his hands, and no one could take it from him. The storm had passed, but the calm that followed felt surreal. Alex stood at his brother's grave, the weight of the past week crashing down on him. He had exposed the truth, but the cost had been high. The people responsible for his brother's death were no longer a threat, but the emotional scars would remain. As he stood there, gazing at the headstone, Alex thought about all that had been lost. His brother's life, the innocence they once shared, and the painful journey to find peace. But there was also a sense of closure. The truth had been told, and it was time to move forward. It wasn't easy, but Alex knew that this was the beginning of his healing. As Alex turned away from the grave, he noticed a familiar face approaching him. Ryan, standing a few feet away, seemed hesitant but determined. Alex hadn't seen him since the night of the confrontation. Ryan had kept his distance, but now it seemed he was ready to talk. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have done more to help him." Alex looked at his old friend, the weight of those words hanging in the air. "It's not your fault," Alex replied, his voice soft but firm. "We all have our battles. But it's over now." Ryan nodded, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "It's over," he echoed, and for the first time, there was a sense of peace between them. The days that followed were a blur. Alex returned to his apartment, where the silence now felt different. The weight of the past no longer hung over him in the same way. But even though the truth had come to light, Alex knew there was still work to be done. The fight for justice didn't end with the people responsible being exposed. It was about honoring his brother's memory and ensuring that his life wasn't defined by the darkness that had tried to consume him. Alex started the long process of rebuilding his life, piece by piece. It wasn't going to be easy, but he was determined to find a way forward. Alex had learned that the journey toward healing wasn't linear. There were days when the weight of his brother's loss still felt unbearable. But in those moments he reminded himself of the truth he had uncovered and the justice that had been served. He had done the hard work, faced the fear, exposed the lies, and fought for his brother's memory. Slowly, Alex began to open up to the people around him again. The walls he had built around himself began to crumble, and with every conversation, every connection, he felt a little more whole. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about moving forward, carrying the love and the lessons from his brother with him. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Alex found himself standing at the edge of a new chapter in his life. He had uncovered the truth about his brother's death, but now it was time to focus on the living. The past would always be with him, a part of his story, but it no longer defined him. As he stood there, looking out at the horizon, Alex realized that the journey had changed him. He was stronger, more resilient, and more connected to the world around him. The pain would fade, and in its place, there would be hope. The love he had for his brother would remain, but now, Alex had the strength to live for both of them.